In September 1982, a parent opened a bottle from the medicine cabinet. It looked ordinary. It looked safe. But one capsule inside had been turned into a murder weapon. Within hours, a 12-year-old girl was dead. Then more people collapsed across the Chicago suburbs. Doctors were looking at separate tragedies. Investigators were about to see a pattern. 7 people would die. The killer did not need a gun, a bomb, or a locked room. The weapon was waiting on ordinary store shelves. If you want more real crime stories backed by sources and records, subscribe and turn on notifications. This case changed how every American opens a medicine bottle. The timeline moved fast. A local medical mystery became a national warning in days. The first victim was Mary Kellerman of Elk Grove Village. She had complained of a sore throat. Her parents gave her medicine. By morning, the case had begun. In Arlington Heights, postal worker Adam Janus also died after taking capsules. His grieving family gathered at the house. Then 2 relatives took capsules from the same bottle. Public health nurse Helen Jensen noticed what others had missed. The bottle mattered. The receipt mattered. Missing capsules mattered. The scene was no longer just a medical emergency. Cook County officials suspected cyanide. Testing showed the capsules had been contaminated. What looked like medicine had been opened, poisoned, and placed back into circulation. Investigators believe the bottles were tampered with after manufacturing. Someone may have taken products from shelves, poisoned capsules, and returned them to stores. Police, the FBI, medical examiners, and company investigators moved at once. The problem was terrifyingly simple. The killer had hidden inside the normal act of shopping. The evidence board connected victims, stores, lot numbers, and bottles. But it still did not reveal who had touched them. Reporters broke into regular programming. Authorities warned people not to take the capsules. In homes across America, bathroom cabinets suddenly looked dangerous. People searched cabinets, purses, glove compartments, and office drawers. A common pain reliever had become a symbol of invisible danger. Police checked shelves across the region. The fear was not one poison bottle. The fear was not knowing how many more were waiting. Bottles were bagged, sealed, tested, and traced. Some came from different lots. That made the threat larger than one manufacturing mistake. The likely method was brutally low-tech. Open capsule, add poison, close capsule, return the bottle. No alarm system was built for that. Johnson & Johnson faced a choice: protect the product or protect the public. The company chose a massive recall and told people not to use the capsules. Millions of bottles came off shelves. Retailers boxed products. Trucks moved pallets. The recall became one of the defining corporate crisis responses in American history. The numbers showed the scale. This was not just a murder case. It was a public safety emergency. Public officials asked people to stop taking the capsules. For a nation used to sealed trust, the warning felt almost impossible. Customers returned bottles by the thousands. Others threw them away. The question spread faster than the warning. What else could be tampered with? Case changed ordinary habits. Shoppers examined seals, shook boxes, and asked whether the package itself could be trusted. The killer weaponized trust. Not trust in one company, but trust in the invisible chain between factory, shelf, home, and body. Investigators traced lot numbers, delivery routes, retail locations, and victim timelines. Every ordinary receipt became a possible clue. Forensic analysis showed the capsules came from multiple manufacturing locations. That supported the theory of retail-level tampering, not factory contamination. The FBI looked for a person who might return to the story. Someone who watched the panic, studied the coverage, or tried to insert themselves into the case. Investigators even watched locations connected to the youngest victim, hoping the killer might be drawn back by publicity. The surveillance produced no arrest. The case file grew, but the killer remained unnamed. Then came a letter. It demanded $1 million from Johnson & Johnson and claimed the deaths would continue unless the money was paid. The letter led investigators to James Lewis. He admitted writing it and was convicted of extortion, but he was never convicted of the poisonings. Lewis served prison time for the extortion letter. The murder case remained different. Suspicion is not proof, and prosecutors needed evidence that could stand in court. Other people were investigated. Tips came in. Leads rose and collapsed. The case became a maze of possible motives, coincidences, and dead ends. Shelves changed. Capsules became suspect. Manufacturers rushed toward new seals, new packaging, and new warnings meant to show if a product had been opened. Before this case, tamper evidence was not part of everyday consumer thinking. After it, the missing seal became a warning sign. The FDA moved toward tamper-resistant packaging requirements for over-the-counter drugs. The lesson was written into regulation, not just memory. Congress also acted. Product tampering became a federal crime. A murderer had exposed a legal gap hiding in ordinary commerce. Before and after the case, the meaning of a medicine package changed. Parents taught children not to touch packages if a seal looked broken. A criminal act had changed the rituals of safety inside American homes. The timing made fear spread into Halloween. Communities worried about candy, strangers, and invisible contamination, even where the facts did not match the myth. Behind the national panic were 7 families. The story is often told through packaging and crisis management. For them, it never became a business lesson. Mary Kellerman, Adam Janis, Stanley Janis, Teresa Janis, Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, Mary Reiner. 7 names remain at the center of the case. One victim, Paula Prince, was photographed buying the contaminated bottle. A man appeared nearby in the store image, but the clue did not solve the case. Investigators studied images, receipts, store records, and witness accounts. Every clue seemed close enough to matter, but not strong enough to close the file. In an unsolved case, the absence of proof becomes part of the story. Investigators can suspect, history can wonder, a courtroom needs more. Decades later, investigators renewed parts of the case. Searches, evidence reviews, and forensic advances kept the file alive. DNA testing was used on evidence tied to the bottles, but available public reports did not produce the courtroom breakthrough families had waited for. The legal status remains stark. The extortion case ended. The murder case did not. Lewis denied committing the murders. Investigators remained interested in him for years. He died in 2023 without being convicted in the poisoning deaths. Cold cases do not freeze. They age. Evidence degrades. Witnesses die. Memories shift. And new technology arrives late. Families carried the case for decades. They lived with a question that never changed. Who put poison into those bottles? The killer was never publicly identified. But the crime left fingerprints on every sealed bottle, every warning label, and every consumer habit that followed. The case turned packaging into security. It made companies think like investigators and consumers think like inspectors. Today, the seal is so normal, most people barely notice it. That is how deeply the 1982 murders changed the marketplace. But in Chicago, the story never fully moved into the past. It remains a murder case, not merely a packaging case. Investigators can reopen boxes, retest samples, and re-interview people. What they cannot recover is the moment before the bottles went back on the shelf. The killer may have been a planner, an opportunist, or someone hiding in plain sight. Publicly, the answer remains unknown. Names entered the investigation, but the case never reached a murder conviction. Tips poured in after anniversaries and renewed coverage. Some were serious, some were noise. Everyone had to be weighed against evidence. Each anniversary revived the same public question. How could a person kill 7 strangers and disappear behind the routine of retail life? Reconstructing the crime means imagining a quiet act. A bottle lifted. Capsules changed. A package returned. A future victim choosing it at random. The victims were not targeted in any known personal way. The randomness made the case even more frightening. The warning was simple: do not consume the capsules. But simplicity did not reduce the fear. It proved the danger was already inside homes. Millions of people removed bottles from cabinets. In a strange way, the safest bottle became the one no one dared open. The investigation did not point to a single factory source. That mattered. If the products left factories clean, the danger came later. The path was long: plant, distributor, truck, store, shelf, home. The killer only needed one weak point in that chain. The redesigned package became the counterattack, not against one killer, but against the possibility that anyone could hide inside a product. The new package was designed so damage would be visible before purchase or use. The case also inspired copycat fears and later tampering crimes. Once people understood the method, the entire country had to rethink access and packaging. The public wanted a face. Investigators had theories. Media had suspects. But justice could not be built from fear alone. Where was the poison obtained? Which stores were visited? How many bottles were handled? Why 7 lives? The unanswered questions still define the case. Every unsolved case has a silence at its center. In this one, the silence sits between a store shelf and a family kitchen. Modern shoppers trust seals, boxes, foil, and plastic because the alternative was proven unthinkable in 1982. If you check a seal before opening medicine, you're performing a habit born from this crime. The case is old, but not abstract. Evidence still exists. Families still remember. Investigators still know the file is unfinished. Elk Grove Village, Arlington Heights, Winfield, Chicago. Ordinary places became part of a story no community wanted. For younger viewers, tamper seals may feel like common sense. For people who lived through the panic, they are reminders. The final record is both clear and incomplete. The most frightening part of the case is not the poison itself. It is how normal everything looked before anyone knew. A killer used the trust of strangers as cover. 40 years later, the cover changed. The identity did not. Every sealed package now carries a quiet message. Someone once proved that ordinary trust was not enough. The packaging changed. The law changed. The shelves changed. But 7 families were left with an answer America still does not have. The Chicago Tylenol murders remain a case about death, fear, corporate response, public health, and one unanswered question: who did it? The lesson was not just to seal bottles. It was to design systems for the moment when trust fails. This episode is based on FBI records, public health reporting, FDA packaging guidance, forensic literature, and long-form Chicago reporting on the cold case. If this real case stayed with you, hit like, subscribe to Frond, and tap the bell. More source-backed crime documentaries are coming next.